Yeah, I just got back from Munich.
Another mint? Yes.
Just a theater workshop with a bunch of high school kids from all over Europe.
Was it nice? Some nice city? I don't know.
Yeah, it was nice.
We love Conservatory.
Yeah, I've never been there.
Yes.
Well, nobody knows everything.
Nobody knows everything.
Ideas for more panels that you would like to see, either the Guild present on their own or in collaboration with the Society, please feel free to email me or email Greg, and we will be happy to do what we can. Hello to the online audience. If you'd like to send us questions via Twitter, please go to @Dramatists Guild, #NewPlay. And when those questions come in, I'll run them up to our moderator and we will ask them as they come in. I think that's it. So without further ado, thank you for coming, and it's my pleasure to introduce Greg Pliska, who's the president of the Society.
I'm the head of the New York Steering Committee.
He's the head of the New York Steering Committee. I gave him a promotion. What
Suddenly
can I say?
promoted.
But enjoy. Oh, if you ask a question, please stand up and say it loudly so our online audience can hear it, okay? Great, enjoy. I'll be right outside if you need me.
Great. Thank you, Terry. Well, thank you, Terry, and thank you, Zach, who's running our tech this evening. And also thanks to Roland Tech, who's had a membership here, who has sort of been my initial contact with the Guild. And I hate to correct Terry, who just gave me such a wonderful introduction and a promotion, but this is actually the second thing we've done. The first thing was not public. It was a songwriter, book writer roundtable, and we had 10 composers from the SCL and 10 book writers, lyricists from the Guild here in the room together, and actually a few of them are here tonight. I recognize some folks on the way in. So we hope this is not just the second of our co-events, but the second of many that we continue to do together. When Roland and I sat down to talk about things we could do, this was one of the first ideas we had. Our membership at the SCL is primarily composers, also lyricists. The organization was based is based in LA, has been out there for some 35 years or so, and has had a growing New York chapter for the last 5 years. There are actually a couple of the other steering committee members here, Elizabeth in the back and Mark over here. If you don't know anything about the SCL, please chat with myself or Elizabeth. Raise your hand back there, and Mark's down here, and Shelby Comstock, who you may have seen on the way in, as our New York administrator. The organization originally worked mostly with composers of film and TV and media, but as we've expanded into New York, one of the major pillars of membership now is also writing for the theater. So this is, and obviously that's a large part of our New York population. So this is a great treat for us to be here at the Guild. As I said, one of the first things Roland and I said would be great to do is a collaboration panel. Let's get some writers and composers together and let them talk about what they do. How do words and music work together? How do a writer and a composer work together to create a piece of musical theater? And we specifically wanted to try to get a veteran team and a newer team, a team who's
Old and young.
Old and young.
I didn't say that. I didn't say old and
You
young.
were thinking it.
I was avoiding it,
I know,
clearly.
I know.
And leave it to the writer to notice what words I'm not saying.
Subtext.
So we're,
It's a lesson in subtext.
we really couldn't be happier with the four folks we've got up here. I suggested that we actually sit composers versus lyricists, but they chose to sit in teams. I'm going to say a few things about them. They are all very capable, talented, successful, and articulate folks, and very modest. So the great part about my job is I get to brag about them, and they don't have to do it. Chris Miller and Nathan Tysen, coming from west to east, Chris Miller and Nathan Tysen have written, I believe, 4 shows together. Mysteries of Harris Burdick was one of the first, I guess. Fugitive Songs, which earned them a Drama Desk nomination for Best Review. The Burnt Part Boys, which is one of the first pieces I knew of you guys. I think I still have a demo CD of that in my apartment, which got a Lortel nomination for Best Musical. And just finishing its run in Atlanta this last weekend, Tuck Everlasting, which has been described as Broadway aimed. And we'll just leave it at that and see what happens. They have also written for Sesame Street, The Electric Company, Ringling Brothers, various other things. They, in their bios, they say, we apply for many grants and receive some of them. And that includes a Low Foundation grant, Rodgers, Richard Rodgers, K. Carlisle Hart grant, ASCAP, NEA, and so on. But that's not even as significant as the Larson grant they got in 2003. And then last year was kind of a great year for you guys. Nathan was given the Kleban Prize for lyrics, for lyric writing. It's a goes one lyricist and one librettist get that award every year, and it's a very prestigious award. And then as a team, they were given the Fred Ebb Award for excellence in musical theater writing. So they are a pretty extraordinary pair of creators. And we're very happy to have them here. Continuing in an easterly direction, Lynn, Ahrens, and Stephen Flaherty have been working together for an extraordinarily long period of time, which I say not so much to talk about their age. They started working together when they were 5, so they're still in their 30s. But few collaborative teams maintain that kind of longevity, and it's an extraordinary tribute to their both to the work they do and to their working relationship. It began with Lucky Stiff in 1988, which was revived in 1997, and there was a film version of which we still haven't seen here. Is that right?
Right. It's doing the film festival.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's heading our way, hopefully. And then 1990, Once on This Island, which I'm sure many of us remember, got a Tony nomination and won the Olivier Award in 1995 when it was revived. My favorite year in 1993, one of several shows they had done at Lincoln Center. Anastasia, the Disney film in 1997, which got 2 Golden Globe and 2 Tony nominations, was a gold record and had the #1 song, which was Journey to the...
Believe it or not,
It's not Journey to the Past.
no, it was the last film in the picture, and it was called At the Beginning.
And they
Oh,
were,
right.
they were Oscar nominations, not Tony nominations.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That,
That's
see,
okay.
I typed this
Would've
up
been nice
so
too.
clearly and wrongly. And then, of course, Ragtime in 1998, which was got them the Triple Crown, a Tony, a Drama Desk, and an Outer Critics Circle Award for Best Musical, as well as Grammy nominations, I believe, and was revived in 2009 on Broadway. Seussical, 2000, revived in 2007, Grammy and Drama Desk nominations, and is one of the most frequently performed shows right now across the country. A Man of No Importance in 2002, which got an Outer Critics Circle nomination, I believe, award. Best musical. Okay, good. They could have brought all the awards in, but then we wouldn't have been able to see them.
They're in storage.
Yeah, exactly. A Man of No Importance, right. Dessa Rose, 2005, Drama Desk and Outer Critics Circle nominations. Cheetah Rivera, The Dancer's Life, which also had music by other folks in 2005. The Glorious Ones in 2007, Drama Desk and Outer Critics Circle nominations. Rocky, the musical, or as Wikipedia says, Rocky das Musical, which premiered in Hamburg and then was here in 2012. Outer Critics Circle nomination, Tony, Drama Desk, and Outer Critics Circle awards were won by that show for Set and Lights, I believe. And Little Dancer, right, which is on its way.
That was last year.
That was last year, right, that was last year. And things in the works that we don't know about. So, Lynn and Steve, I'm thrilled that you're here. I'm going to try to talk as little as possible. That's probably the most talking I'll do. But a quick story. I did a composer librettist workshop at New Dramatists, which goes on every year. It's a terrific experience. It's 2 weeks of intense collaboration, composers, writers, performers, really taking apart how do you put words to music and put music to words and tell a story with words and music, and how do you understand how to communicate with each other as creative artists. And we spent 2 weeks grinding through this stuff, and you worked with every other potential counterpart on the other team, and sometimes it worked great, and other times it was a disaster, but it was a learning experience. And at the end of this, we're all sort of wrapping up, and one of the writers stands up and he says, you know, if I had had this workshop 10 years ago, my first marriage might not have fallen apart. and so I thought, well, you know, there is a way in which a collaboration is just like a relationship. And hopefully we'll talk not only about how well it works, but also how you get through the parts that don't work so well. Anybody who tells you their marriage is just so easy from the beginning to the end is, of course, not telling the truth. And so I guess my first question for you guys, and we can take it however you want, is how did you know, going back to the sort of collaborative dating process, how did you know when you'd found the right one, you know, in your teams? How did you know when you'd found the one you wanted to work with?
Well, Chris and I met in 1999 in grad school. There's a musical theater writing program at NYU. And Chris says that day one, he saw me in my long hair. That's the guy. And this summer, we actually celebrated 15 years writing together. Great. So it's very exciting. Thank you for calling us young.
Yeah, well,
yeah. I think it was something about it. We had so much in common immediately. Both of our fathers are ministers. We both have an older brother, 3 years older than us. We both have like a love of like folk music, and just the same kind of.
Yeah, and in our class at NYU, we were the youngest in the class, so we sort of immediately gravitated towards each other, and it worked out that we had like a similar aesthetic, and sort of we liked the same kind of theater and the same kind of storytelling that. We just had a lot in common aesthetically and in our lives too, so it like made sense.
Was there a moment when you were writing something together where you said, wow, this is, like, so you see each other across the crowded room and you say, oh, that guy might be the one for me, but then, is that a strange question? Is there a moment when you said, oh no, this is really exciting, what's happening now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first song that we wrote together, which it's a song called Growing Up, you can watch we can watch it on YouTube. But, we started talking about our history together, and we kind of melded both of our stories together and wrote this song. And it started with just like a night at a bar, and we had some drinks, and I took some notes, and then we kind of wrote it in an hour together, and it just felt kind of very magical and very real. And for a lyricist, I'm always looking for a collaborator that's willing to let me like sit on that piano bench with him and like just be in the room together. The second that like the door starts to close is the second that I feel like we're not really being able to communicate, and that he respects me enough that I can talk about music with my limited knowledge of it, and that he should also be able to throw out any sort of lyrical ideas. I think there has to be, best idea wins always, and that always felt, that's been the rule for the two of us, and I think that's why we've continued to work together.
Yeah. And you guys are nodding over here. What?
No, everything they say is interesting and right. Stephen and I are sort of the opposite of that. We couldn't be more different. Our backgrounds sort of couldn't
She's
be
a
more
girl.
different. He's a boy, starting right there. Yeah. But we've been working together. Last year we celebrated our 30th anniversary of working together. It's amazing.
Yes.
And to this moment, the moment when we met in the BMI Workshop in 1982. He was a self-contained lyricist and composer and didn't need to work with anybody else. He was just this young, shy person who would get up and do these beautiful songs. And I had entered the workshop as a lyricist, although I had had a career up until that point as a composer, lyricist, songwriter for television and stuff like that. But I thought, well, it's theater. I've made a whole career on 5 chords, and I don't think that I'm going to be able to do that in theater. So I decided to just try and get in as a lyricist, which I did. And I would admire Stephen across a crowded room. I admired his work, and I thought he'll never need me. So I was sort of speed dating a lot of other composers, and they were all terrific, and I've remained friends with many of them, but nothing quite clicked. And at the very end of that first year, I don't know if any of you have been involved in the BMI Workshop, but the first year there are assignments and sort of a standard array of assignments so that you learn your craft. And the last one was a song for 2 people in different places singing together. Wasn't that it? Like a duet?
Yeah, it's so just like split stage, split screen.
Separate but together sort of song.
Yeah.
And I remember I was standing outside the building talking to a few people
And this is like going through most of the year writing my own words and music.
Yeah, and he had never said really.
And
said
I hadn't.
No, he's so
But I had
shy.
admired Lynn across the room, and I felt that I wanted to shake things up for myself personally, because I was frankly a lyricist by default. I really felt that I was a composer, but I'd been writing lyrics in college and for college shows and that, but there was nobody in Cincinnati, Ohio that, really wrote lyrics, so I was doing it by default. And there was the last assignment of the year, and Lynn was walking west and I was walking east, and I just felt this little thing on the back of my neck say, "Turn around, you schmuck." And I turned around and I screamed down the block. I said, "Lynn, do you want to work on the last assignment together?"
And I was so taken aback.
And
I
she
was
was like, "Oh,
he speaks.
oh, yeah."
I was so shy.
And, well, and also our ways of working when we met were entirely different.
Yeah.
Lynn came from like the pop and the commercial world, and she's very much an improv gal. Like get up on your feet and like create it and
Let's bang some chords and
bang
see
some
what
chords.
happens.
And, yeah. And I my background was very eclectic growing up in terms of my interests, but my education was classical. I studied serious composition in Cincinnati, and I thought the idea of a writer was to lock yourself away in a little cell by yourself. And I grew a beard because I thought that would help the cause. You get very, very serious, and I would score everything out on paper. So I was like it was much more rigid than Lynn's way of working. So she denies this, but it's absolutely true that whenever we finally got to her apartment for that song, for the end of BMI, she says, "Okay, make something up.
That's
Just make something
That's
up."
not true.
That is true. And I had never written, I realized, or made anything up in front of another person. I thought it was much more of a private thing, yeah. So in a certain way, it was a dare, and it really pushed me out of my comfort zone.
But I think had I written a lyric first because my memory of this moment is that I had written some sort of a lyric first for a really truly bad song that you will never hear on YouTube. And I think I put it on the piano and said, you know, see what you can make of this, and yeah, make something up in front of me, which he had never, you know, he'd never worked that way. And I will say, I remember he put his hands down, and he sort of looked at it, and then he just did a little this and a little that, and I thought, ah, there it is. That's who I want to work with. I did have that voila moment with Stephen, because he understood lyrics, and he knew how to set lyrics beautifully.
See, and also Lynn has like a really musical ear, so you know, in a certain way, as it's developed over time, we've been one another's editors in a certain way, which is really helpful. So I think that first song wasn't honestly very good, but the process of creating the not very good song was wonderful.
It was fun.
And so we began writing together.
The song was two people putting, this is how old this was, putting personal ads in the Village Voice. I mean, come on. You know?
So doesn't that just scream 1983?
It certainly does.
Yeah.
Missed connections.
Right.
That's right.
And
Just saw
talking
you on
about
the
their differences,
downtown
which is sort
train.
of apropos of us starting to work together. That was fun.
You know, you guys a question I was going to ask later, but it seems apropos now, because you guys talked about being in the room together, and obviously that first moment is being in the room together. When you work now, are you still in the room together? Are you using technology more, so you're putting things on Dropbox and sharing things remotely? What's your, you know, I guess the question is, how has your process changed in 15 or 30 years? As technology has advanced, what tools are you using now that you weren't using then?
It's been long enough for us that we have a shorthand. It always helps if we're in the room together. But if we have like an assignment that we have to get done and we're not in the same city or part of the city or just can't get together, then we'll, you know, share files via Dropbox or email or whatever. But for the most part, our shorthand helps in that, like, he can send me something and I can set 4 lines of it and say maybe it goes here next, or we can like get sort of like a rough idea of what it's going to be, even if it's just like tonally in the right direction, so that when we can finally like get together, because I feel like it always goes quicker when you're together.
That's true.
When you're in the same,
You know?
when you're in the same
When you're in
room,
the same
it
room.
always moves faster.
Because like the text can change and the music can change and it all can happen at the same time, as opposed to being like, I'm going to be a slave to this lyric because they're not there, or vice versa.
Yeah. And 90% of the time when we write songs together, it's lyric first. And I have learned, and I'm curious to know if it's the same with you guys or if it changes, but I have learned, the biggest shortcut is that I never write a full lyric anymore, because I know that the structure is going to change. And so as long as we've had a good conversation about the story of the song and a possible idea for a hook or a title, I'll go away and I'll just write 2 sections. And I don't even call them verses or choruses. I just call them an A and a B, so that we at least can distinguish between the 2 of them and just see what happens musically with it. And Chris will set it, and of course something will change, and then we'll talk through the rest of the structure. So then I'll go in and be like, all right, so we're going to put the B first, and then we'll do 2 A's, and then a B, and then maybe a C, and then he will kind of form the rest of the song while I am finishing the lyric.
Right.
But it saves a lot of time that way.
Right, avoids wasting all that time up front where you put something into a full form.
Yeah, you're
and
like,
you
oh, I'm
realize,
so
that
proud
was
of this
wrong.
like rhyme scheme, but it's not going to work anymore
Yeah.
because the music has to do this.
Right.
So.
And what about you guys? How do you find yourselves working?
It's
All different
all
ways.
different ways. I mean, I couldn't even tell you what percentage of our work is lyrics first or music first. A lot of it is together in the same room. Once in a while it's lyrics first. I'm always pushing to get a little snippet of music, because I think it was, I always quote, I think it was the Bergman said that the words are on the tips of the notes, and the minute I hear something that feels emotionally right for a moment, I can set it like that. I can just take that and run with it.
It's
makes
almost like
easy.
creating like just musical fabric. You know, like if we're talking about a certain moment, I'll come up with something. I'll say, here's one way we could go. Here's a different approach. You know, here's.
The other day we were working on a song. We're working on Anastasia for the stage. That'll be our next project.
Oh, right.
And we're we're working on one particular song, and Stephen was doing just that. He was improvising different feelings for this one moment, and they, he was unhappy with all of them. He didn't,
Yeah, I tried all these different approaches, and none of them felt right.
And we were in the same room, and I said, "How about a tango?" I don't know
and I
where
said,
that came
that
from.
makes no sense. These are Russian people.
I know.
Right?
I know.
But then I started goofing around,
Russian
and then I wanted to be more lighthearted and a comedic moment. And then I came up with this dark tonality that sort of sounded like it could be the cousin of the tango, but it was really funny because these two characters are sneaking around the third character who's in the center, and then it became this trio that came from a totally different place.
Right.
That I said to Lynn, I wanted the chorus to be like, you can't see it coming.
And he just did that, and I went, "Oh, that's great," And so we wrote a song in about a half a day.
Yeah.
That seems good.
Yeah.
So far.
Right.
But we won't be the judge of that, I don't think.
But it's been really fun. There were so many different ways to do it. I mean, with Ragtime, to get the gig, we actually had to audition with other writers, and and I think I may have told you this. We had to make a demo tape, and the assignment, if you were, or to win the prize, is you were given a treatment that Terrence McNally had done of 65-page treatment, and then we had to write 4 songs.
Okay.
And then we counted how many writing days we had to write, arrange, record, mix,
And shove it under the door.
and say, here you go. And when we counted how many working days together we had, it was 11.
Wow.
11 days.
To write 4 songs. And so
produce them. Well, they had to be produced.
And at one point in the middle there, I was in London, and Lynn was doing something. It was really complicated. So just for that, just to be practical, we decided 2 of them would be music first, 2 would be lyrics first, and then we'd swap.
Yeah.
And that's really,
to get it done.
the genesis of how that,
What's fun is hearing how the sense of play is so important, and just being willing to do something completely silly to break out of a stuck place, which requires the trust, obviously, that you build up, and you both talked about that too.
Exactly.
What do you guys do when you're stuck?
No.
Smoke.
One thing is good is if you order Chinese food, you will usually find the solution in the fortune cookie. That we always do that. It's like, oh, I see.
But you do have to be careful with Chinese food, because with talking about
true.
food combining, Lynn would say, "Don't eat the egg roll. Don't eat the egg roll," because anytime you
And he
do,
would, and he'd fall
and
asleep.
I'd fall asleep. So stay away from the egg roll.
Everybody's writing furiously.
Write that
Chinese
down.
food.
This is really good
Egg rolls.
practical
Right.
advice.
But I mean, I guess in a way it's a larger question too, which is, music first or words first is part of the question everybody asks. But the bigger question is, that's not actually where you start, right? I mean, you're starting with, as you said, the story of the song, understanding of the character or the moment. Or whatever.
Yeah, which is why, just from the place that I approach things musically, is I always have to have some sort of idea of clear. I guess everybody does, but the dramatic, what is the point of this? And it's hard for me to come up with music for a moment that isn't specific yet. That is a vague, is this going to be funny? Is this going to be a ballad? What is this? I usually have to have some sort of concrete
What are they
approach.
feeling? What's happening?
Yeah, even if it's just an A section or whatever. And then once that is right, then I can come up with the music for the next section, or for the rest of the song, and be like, this is where it can go. But it always I don't know.
It is a weird litmus test, and it kind of drives me crazy, and yet it also is just how we work. That if Chris can set my lyric fast, and the song is usually right, and the approach is usually right. And if he struggles, and when we're saying fast, I'm saying 30 minutes. He reads it, gets it, and he has some sort of feel to it. And if that doesn't happen, it unfortunately usually means that I have to go back to the drawing board, which sucks.
Sitting
But
back
it
there with your
usually is-
stopwatch.
it's
Right.
right.
28
Right?
minutes.
Come on, get it. Come on, you can do it. No! New approach.
And then I
But then
do it,
again,
and
that's why
it's
you only write an A, and you don't
Right.
write the entire thing.
Right.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Do you guys have to demo stuff pretty significantly when you're sending it out to other people? or are you just
Yeah.
doing stuff piano and voice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at making like really elaborate demos unless I can sit behind the engineer and tell the musicians what to do. Like I can't just like do it all in Logic myself. I can, but it takes me a long time, and when you have to do demos like that, they usually have to be done very quickly and really well, and mine are always kind of busted, so I usually tend to rely on piano vocal demos because I can do those really fast. But
And you play guitar really well too, right?
yeah, and I'll do that too. I haven't for a couple of years because I had a little hand problem. But
Do you find it helpful, more helpful, less helpful to just like literally walk in the door, sit at the piano, and play your song?
Yeah.
Like the Bro Building or Tin Pan Alley.
Yeah, and we've done that a couple. That's how we got the Tuck Everlasting job, and that's how we got another job for another show that is we're not allowed to talk about yet. But yeah, mostly I feel more comfortable like going in and practicing and
Doing it
like
live.
presenting
For
it.
sure.
Because also, I mean, that's a whole other panel, a whole other conversation. Is like, how much do you want to, depending on who you're submitting work to, like, how much do you want to give them in terms of a fully realized thing, or
Right, it's an eternal question. Do you
Yeah.
want them to hear a fully orchestrated thing, or is that going to scare people away because
Right.
you've got a 30-piece string section, and so
Right.
no one's going to want to produce that?
yeah. I mean,
Or-
when we pitched Tuck to those producers, we had written a couple songs on guitar. I took it in and I like played them on guitar, and they were like, that sounds too orchestrated to us. We need to hear another version of it. And it was just
Wow.
on guitar. So
So what did you do?
I just did a piano version,
And they were blown away.
yeah, they were like, that's it. And
Well,
you're
in
like,
general, people
okay.
like to fill in the blanks with their imagination, and when you fill it in too much, literally,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they tend, when you're pitching a song or a show or whatever, they feel they wanna have some input. They don't wanna feel that it's done, even though it may be done, they don't wanna think that. They wanna think, oh, I can make this into the, so it's better in general to not fill in everything,
Right.
cause they can just envision something, in their minds. It's more exciting.
Yeah, leave a little space for them to feel like they can come in and produce this work.
Yeah.
Related question, I think. You guys have written book. Have you written book as well, or have you always worked with other book writers?
For our thesis, I had to write the book, thesis at NYU.
And that-
But then when that was the Burn Part Boys.
Right.
But then it went through many changes, and we ended up bringing in a book writer.
Right.
And since then, we have not written book, but we're about to work on
A
a
piece.
show together doing book.
Doing
Yeah.
I
book
think
together.
we've learned enough that we can do
You
it.
finally learned something about the
Yes.
theater.
Yeah, and like Stephen, when I got to NYU, I was a self-contained, out of necessity, writing lyrics and book and doing everything. And mostly my first year at NYU, I was writing text until I got to, I think I did like 2 or 3 assignments where I was a composer. But I knew that in my second year I was going to switch over because I was like, I've had it, I don't want to write words anymore, I just want to write music.
Yeah.
And so now, after 15 years, I'm like getting the itch again. So
It is interesting how all 4 of you come from a sensibility that's not just in your own little silo, but understanding something about words and book, dramatic
Yeah.
writing and music.
That was one of the wonderful things about Ragtime, actually.
It's really important.
Yeah, I mean, I've written book for probably 6 or 7 of our musicals, and we've only really worked with, I think, 3 other book writers,
Yeah,
Joe
for
Dart,
theater, yeah.
Terrence McNally, and Tom Meehan, and Joe Darty, and the rest are my book. But on Ragtime, everybody did another thing. So I was the lyricist, but I had written book. Terrence McNally was the playwright, but he's written operas and other musical forms. Graziella Danielle was the choreographer, but she had directed. Frank Galati was the director, but he had written plays. So we were just all swimming around in each other's, various Sunday excitements and getting such wonderful and giving wonderful, sort of feedback on everything. And it's always, I think it's almost a necessity to understand as much as you can about everything. I'm one of those writers who sits in tech every moment that I possibly can, because I love watching the lights and learning about that, and I love seeing how transitions are done and how sets are moved and the technical aspects of things. Not that I know a whole lot about it, but I understand how it all works together, and I'm able to, if I have a thought, I can actually articulate it, you know, as opposed to just sort of sitting there not knowing what's wrong, and it's good to know.
Nothing makes me happier than being at a production meeting. When
Yeah.
each
Yeah, they're so much
department
fun.
talks about
And
what they're
they-
doing.
yeah.
Wow, you guys are really experts at that thing. You really thought a lot about that. It's so
Yes.
cool. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, I really get jazzed by that
Yeah,
process.
no, it's exciting. I love when, you know, you can analyze something. Why is that song not working? I know it's a great song. I really know it in my heart of hearts, and yet it's not working. Why is that? And if you're able to analyze why, I mean, as an example, I occasionally mention this in Ragtime. Maren Maisie was singing this song called Back to Before. That was one of my favorite songs that we've ever written, and it's a beautiful, perfect song. I don't think I could do better than that, really. It's really right up there. And it was just not landing. And we were trying to think, why not? And we, little by little, realized she was against a stormy sky, grayish-green, beautiful, with some stormy clouds, wearing a grayish-green, beautiful dress. Her hair was kind of all disheveled, and she was singing this song. And so little by little, they put her in a white dress. They kept the stormy grayish-green background, but the sun rose as she sang and gained power in the song. They fixed her hair so she didn't look like the mad woman of Shiloh. And by the end of it, and the other thing was that there was a boardwalk a boardwalk like at Atlantic City, upstage, and it had the ability to go up and down, and it was up for the whole song. And at a certain point, the sun rose, she came down stage, that went down, and it was like, and she stopped the show every night.
But
And
also,
it
do you remember the
was a little
entire first third she sang in profile?
in profile, and then we turned her around.
It's
And
like,
you know,
turn
and it's
front.
a little bit of everybody.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a little bit of everybody, you
Yeah.
know, in that situation, and you have to know to say, could you perhaps have a white dress or something, you know, and to sort of notice and understand what's happening with each moment is valuable to be able to do it.
And also, I think the song is really going from the darkness and going to the light. So, you know, once we knew that, every aspect, including the
that.
orchestration, the arrangement, the lighting, every aspect, you know, was,
Right,
was
could
about
support
that.
that.
Yeah, and at the end of it, it should be a sense of joy and a sense of relief. You
Yeah.
know, that the actress then was playing and it all came together.
I mean, that's one of the challenges, but also one of the delights of our business is not only are you collaborating in a team of 2 or sometimes 3, you're then working with the rest of the creative team to bring this thing to life, the actors, the musicians, the conductor, the director, choreographer, designers, to bring this thing to life on stage. How do you guys deal with that sort of collaboration out to the rest of the collaboration?
I think it's the same best idea wins, because it's so easy to take things personally, especially when you're an artist, because it's such an emotional thing that happens. But for me, and I think for us, like especially when it like goes out to designers and directors and all that stuff. First, like hopefully you surrounded yourself with really smart people who are smarter than you could ever imagine. And that you trust them, because it's never personal. I mean, clearly in some cases it is personal, but from my perspective, like, especially musically, it's not personal. It's like, if this doesn't work, then we must fix it. Like, so I feel like in all of our collaboration, like, as it goes out to directors and designers and choreographers, it's the same sort of approach, in my experience.
Yeah, I think the best and most successful collaborations we've had are people that are willing to be a little egoless and willing to take critique and ideas from the others that are surrounding you. I mean, especially with Tuck that we just finished in Atlanta, we were having a really hard time with the final scene, and it was our set designer that came up with like the location and what needed to happen in that scene. And he just was in the room and was passionate and cared about it, and because we let him in, he solved it for us, which
Wow,
was
that's great.
amazing.
Yeah.
Right, that's great.
And that's part of it. It's that passion and the willingness to have a shared vision of what this end product has got to be. You're
Yeah.
all in it together. to achieve this thing, and if it's not getting there, then everybody can feed into that.
Yeah.
And similarly, it seems like if you're not in it together to achieve the same thing, you're never going to get there because you're all going in different directions.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And unlike film, it's done in real time. So you and your collaborators, the entire group, are making it happen in the moment, as opposed to here's my cut and I'll score my film. You know what I mean? So there's something about the shared group energy that's thrilling, I think.
Yeah.
You know, and even after a difficult preview, you know, it's great just to have that army and say, okay, well, that didn't go very well. So so what do we do next? And you know, and I really love that group energy.
Yeah.
You know?
We went on once on this island. There was one moment in the creating of that show which I just loved so much. We had written a song. We had done a workshop, and there was one area. And I think that it was for the god of water, and whose name is Agwe in the show. And Agwe had a song called "Daughter of the Sea," and we staged it with ribbons of water and all this stuff, and it was very beautiful.
It was very languid.
Very languid, and it just was terrible. And so we wrote another song which we thought might work. We didn't know, and we went over to Graziella Danielle's house. And when she
it was
has her,
partially written. That was.
It was partially written. The song was partially written, but we had a notion for it. We had some words and some music, and we went over there, and we're in her living room with her upright piano, and Loy Arsenis, our set designer, was there as well. So Steven sits down, and I start singing, and Steven's
The funny
playing.
thing I was saying, it's not ready. It's not ready.
And I'm
it's
going,
not
just
ready.
do it.
Just do it.
Just come on.
So
just do
it. So.
And it was fabulous because he started going dun 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 dun. Graziella's, who's
She gets up on her feet, starts
she starts
moving.
dancing, and she's going, and it's like, I see it, and Loy goes, I see umbrellas, and with the three
And
of
it
us,
was
all
like-
of us, are like dancing around the
It's
living
singing
room.
the song.
The song is called Rain. It's the god of water, and he's creating flood that a car is going to crash on. And we were all dancing. Steven's playing. We're all sambaing around her living room. It was wonderful, and that's what the number became.
That was
And
the staging. That was the
anytime you
look,
see
that
it, they
was-
do it with those umbrellas, and they do it with the same kind of movement, and it's really delightful to see.
And it shows you have to be willing to allow yourself
To
to
be
look
silly.
foolish, because I thought it wasn't finished, and I wanted to spend more time with it.
Right.
And if I had spent more time, that moment wouldn't have
Wouldn't
happened
happen.
in that moment.
That's
That
right.
wouldn't be in the
Right.
show
Right,
that way.
right.
I mean, that's like the beginning of your collaborative relationship
right.
when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
thrown
That's
into
right.
this. Oh no,
Yeah,
I'm
right.
not ready.
I'm not,
And you
I'm
just
not
did
ready
it.
for most things.
You're never going to be ready.
I'm
so
never
might
going
as
to be
well
ready,
do
so
it.
just surrender.
Yeah, those moments you're always like about to throw up because you have to like play
That's right.
this like thing
You know
that
that
isn't even
feeling.
fully formed, and you're just like,
Like, oh,
oh,
really?
I just get me
I
out of
know.
here. I don't
I
even
know.
want to do this, and then you do it, and you want to cry because you just did
You
something,
made a fool of
and
yourself, and it
yeah.
was wonderful.
and then they're like, yes, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's
That's it.
perfect.
Yeah.
That's very, I asked you guys to think about a moment that was a collaborative hurdle or a challenge, and maybe share some of that with us. I don't know if you did or not. Probably just going to say, no, actually, we're going to play a great song that we wrote. But I just thought, I mean, it's obvious you've written great songs. We know some of those great songs. We've heard those great songs. We know the success. I just thought, how do we share with people something about how you navigate the moments that are not working and come out with something? So, do you want to play or sing something and talk about that?
Sure. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Good. Who wants to go first?
Well, we
Go ahead.
have a before and after that we
Oh,
can
perfect.
that we can
Great,
do,
great, great.
and they're both like 2.5 minutes, so
Wonderful.
very short.
Do you want to
Yeah.
tell us about it?
Okay, so we're gonna do songs from Tuck Everlasting. So Tuck Everlasting is a very popular young adult novel. It's celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. It's about an 11-year-old girl who runs away from home and meets a family that is immortal, that has been living forever. And she goes on this journey with this family, and at the end of the story, she is posed with the question, will I drink from this spring and have an immortal life, or will I embrace my own mortal life? And so that's kind of big, heavy questions in this show. And we're gonna play you one of the heavier moments, which is one that we picked it because I think we've rewritten this song more than any other song in the show. And this is for Miles Tuck. So there's a family of 4, the Tucks. There's Ma Tuck, Pa Tuck, and then their 2 kids, Jesse and Miles. Miles is 30 years old, and he's been 30 for about 80 years, so he's 120. And of all of the Tucks, when we first meet him, he's sarcastic, he's cold, he's a little dangerous, where the rest of the Tucks are very warm and welcoming to this little girl. And you find out about 3/4 through the Act 1, we finally find out why he's been so standoffish. And what we discover is that of all the Tucks, before he drank the water, he had a family. He had a wife and a child, and by the time they put it together that they were immortal, and his family hadn't drank the water, it was too late. His wife was quite a bit older. His son was old too, and they didn't know where the spring was. Anyway, basically, his wife took his child, and they left. And so this was a song moment that he's explaining that to Winnie. I hope I did an okay job explaining that. All right. So we went 2 different directions with it, and we're gonna play you. We had written the song, and then we decided, all right, let's try another direction. Let's try a different color. Just because we thought it was a little too heavy.
Yeah, in all of the workshops, whenever he would come forward and sing the song, it was like, oh, another ballad, come on, dude. And so we were like, let's approach it from a different angle and see if we can't and there were like 2 other versions of the song too. That it's like we could do a whole night of versions of this song.
So this is sort of 3 or 4 iterations into 3 or 4
Yes.
third or fourth attempt at getting this
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
And this is not the successful version.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Yeah.
Then we'll play you what we think is the successful version.
The one that actually worked with an audience and people.
Yeah. But this is what we brought to Atlanta, thinking this is going to be in the show. Everyone's going to love it. It's a different sound. And it just, well, you're the judge. So this is Miles singing to Winnie. You'll fall in love. You'll say a vow. You'll ask yourself, what do I do now? All in good time. He'll pull away, untie the knot, until you're hated or forgot. All in good time. Each life has a lesson, but the lesson all depends on the moral of the story. And my story never ends. So you'll feel blessed, and you'll feel cursed, from good to bad, from bad to utterly miserable, all in good time. You'll try to lose yourself in liquor, cards, and dice. You'll swap your every virtue for every kind of vice. You put on a face like our company, our what is that? What is the song that Happily Ever? Or Yes, or
I'm still here.
I'm still here. But like we couldn't like really get the jokes that we wanted. We just wanted to try to have it a little lighter, but like it was like a jazzy, bluesy feel. But what we realized is that the song should really be about his backstory. It shouldn't be about the drinking and the booze and like I'm over this. It needs to be about I lost this child. So we really can kind of feel the gravitas of what Winnie is going to be forced to make this decision at the end of the show. Also, we realized that placement in the show, we were really worried that it was a ballad, but once we then moved a song before that had this fantastic dance break, and everyone was it was like a ragtimey kind of tune.
Yeah.
It was okay, and we finally earned this more serious moment, which we will now present to you as Exhibit B. In the scene, he explains to Winnie that his son is named Thomas. I had a farmhouse with a grandfather clock where I would teach time to my son. Our lessons began at 12 o'clock sharp when the hands would come in as one. I'd say the big hand counts minutes, it's so tightly wound, it chases the small hand to make hours go round. I taught Thomas constellations in the sky, how to tell a silver maple from a cottonwood. I taught Thomas to divide and multiply, but what he never understood was time. As I watched him grow, time he would never know, time where my regret resides. Time, if I only knew the what and how and who that time truly divides. There was a farmhouse with a grandfather clock, where one day I woke up alone. They feared I was magic, they feared I was cursed, but mostly they feared the unknown. The big hands, the father, the small hands, the son, and there never came a time when they came back as one. I taught Thomas how to catch a firefly, how to make a pebble skip and a rowboat skim. She took Thomas and never said goodbye. The one thing I could never give to him was time. I'm left with nothing. Nothing but time.
So I guess that one stayed.
Yeah, people really liked
It
it.
deserves its place right there, yeah.
Yeah. And you realize that that's what you want to know, that information. You want to understand why he's being mean to this little girl, and like, and then once he tells that story, everyone feels for him in this amazing way. And we also had the amazing Robert Lindsay play the role, and he just was
Yeah, he was
perfect.
great.
He could like handle kind of both sides of that character in the best way.
Beautiful,
So,
really great.
I love the parts of the accompaniment that remind us of a ticking clock
Yeah.
without being obviously that.
bing, 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 bing.
Right, but you know, just this thing, come back to this pulse that sits there. I also love in hearing the two songs, the way time is part of the hook, one way or the other. But
Yeah.
you probably have a page of all the phrases using time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
I'd love to actually give a chance. Do people have questions for Chris and Nathan about that material and that process? Just to open it up here before Steve and Lynn says something. Yeah.
Did it ever occur to you to just rewrite the lyrics to the song to have the different content instead of trashing the entire song? I mean, I thought both songs were really lovely.
Thank you.
Can everybody hear the question? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did that. I think we tried it from like every possible angle, and I mean, sometimes we tend to jump the gun and be like, let's just write a new song, and then sometimes we'll try it as many ways possible so we don't have to write another song. And with that one in particular, I mean, there were like so many versions of it that it became hard to tell what was, especially when you're rewriting something constantly, you start to lose sight of like where the song started and what the song actually is and what it should be.
And I think just tonally, it would be very weird for him to tell the story of his son and what happened with that kind of jazzy, bluesy. Because I think everything in that first song, he's just throwing it away, saying this doesn't hurt me, this doesn't hurt me. Where that second version is very earnest, and you just kind of have to like go for it.
Yeah.
But there were I've fallen in love with many timelines, and there was just a time where I just kept giving him the same words over and over and over again, because I love the idea of like I'm left with nothing but time. I was like, this is really great. And there was a song called Left with Nothing But Time, and then you're like, no, it should just be the last line of the thing. So at some point you just have to give new information if you're swimming and you're stuck.
Yeah.
That's nice. Other questions from these guys?
Oh, but to continue with what you were saying, so with integrating the book, so in your first version, where did you then, in the book, basically allow the character to reveal what the real problem was? In other words, you had to figure out then how to change the book with the song, correct?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, so it was just with the first song that we presented, it was adding all these additional beats because he had to explain the whole story before he could sing the song. And then he sang the song, and then she had to then change him in some way, because that was kind of the rule for the show, is that anytime Winnie is with one of the individual tucks, she has to change him for the better in some way or another. So then we also had to have that moment, and then, which was in the middle of the song, and it was clunky, and then we had the final moment.
Yeah.
Where now, in the new version, he could kind of hint at what happened, tell the story, let the song and connect to her, and right at the end of the song she just said, I lost my father when I was 10, I will love him and miss him forever, because his whole worry is that, will my son even remember me? And she says that to him, and he says they're about to go to the fair, and he says go and have everything, and he gives her all the money that he has in her pocket, and she goes to the fair and has a wonderful time. But that was then solved with 4 lines instead of 20 lines, which is great.
He's almost already made the change journey simply by singing the song, and she just
Yeah.
unlocks the last piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he also, I think we had her leave at some point. In the previous version, he sang the song, and when he had left, so he was just singing the song to the audience, which is, like give him someone to share this with, and also let Winnie hear the story. So it's funny that that was an epiphany, but it was. I mean, there was probably a full year of this.
Yeah, I mean, there was a whole version of the song with him actually teaching a little boy, and the wife coming in, and then there was a chorus of ladies that sang with it.
Yeah, and then it was a soap opera. It was very.
It was a whole
You've
like.
done good. You did the right thing.
Yeah.
Well, Stephen and Lynn, would you share something?
We will. It won't be as fabulous as that. But what I was thinking from your question and listening to that was that, for my money, a lot of the struggle that you have in writing musicals is not so much the song, but the structure of the show. Because you can take a perfectly wonderful song, and if it's in the wrong part of the musical, it will get cut.
Yep.
And we have a number of songs, not a big number, but a certain number of songs that have been in the wrong place, been fabulous songs and have been cut because we couldn't find the right place to put them. And we've gotten a lot more savvy about that as we've gone on. But that to me, and probably because I am a librettist as well as a lyricist, that to me is always the biggest challenge, is getting the pearls in the right order on the string, or however you want to put that. You know, it affects it can take a brilliant song and make it not work, or it can take an okay song and elevate it into something amazing. And notes are being passed.
It just says you're doing great.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to add that, you know, because a lot of the time, I mean, we have several shows.
Well, we've just been rehearsing a Man of No Importance, which is a show that we did at Lincoln Center, and we're going to be doing it in right before St. Patrick's Day.
54 Below.
54
October
Below.
15th.
Oh,
March 15th.
And I bring it up
Yeah.
because there's a song that works so well in the show, and originally it was sung by a secondary character and was placed in Act 1. Never worked, and we cut it. And then we were trying to structure Act 2, and we knew that there had to be an event or a moment where this all started adding up for this the lead character. And one of them, Lynn says, "What about that number that the old guy sang, the Cuddles number? Bring that out of the trunk." And whenever we placed it with him remembering his wife and how love never dies, but he's remembering the wife, and all of a sudden that motivates Alfie for the next scene, which then, and not only was it a great moment and an unexpected moment, but it really motivated the entire rest of the act. And I'm thinking, what were we thinking of? You know, so
that to me is the biggest challenge.
It wasn't the song; it was
not
placement.
The song. I mean,
function.
you know, I feel like we can all just write songs till the cows come home, because that's what we love to do. That's our joy. You know, we just love getting in a room and sitting at a piano or with a guitar and just inventing songs. That's such a joy. The hardest part is the structure. That's really the hardest part, and if that's not right, the songs will never be right, and if that is right, you get away with a lot, because, you know, you're telling a good story, and it's about storytelling. You know, I was going to say, one of the hardest shows that, well, there were two shows that were very, very difficult to write for us, and I happened to write book for both of them. One was The Glorious Ones, and one was Rose, both of which were done at Lincoln Center, and both of which I think are two of my favorite shows that we've ever worked on. But getting there, I mean, the Rose took 10 years of just trying to convince Stephen that we should do this show. And then I finally had to
I found the source material really, really problematic. It was beautifully written, but it was so dense and gnarly, and there's a lot of anger in it, and it was just really hard, and it was written in a dialect that, you know, it had like so many things, for my money, going against it, and yet Lynn said the ending is so amazing, but it's like, yes, but you have to get to the ending, you know. So I come bowing off that one, and she brought it to me, I think, in like '92.
I don't know.
And then she kept, like a little dog, you know.
I'm a little tenacious.
She kept being tenacious, and she said, read it. And I think I wouldn't have been able to write Rose had I not done Ragtime. And whenever I did that, it became, in a certain way, a companion piece. And I read it again. I said, this is really beautiful. I said, I know you have a vision for it, and I can't grasp that because I can't get it myself. I said, can you just somehow put your vision on paper? And she pretty much wrote what felt like an opera libretto, you know, pretty much like a folk opera for pretty much an act and some other little bits and pieces. And this is one of the rare instances where I then went away. And I was away for a chunk of time, and I said it, and you know, because usually, honestly, you know, it's a yin and yang thing, or it's like, here's a piece of music, or here's a scrap of, and this was like, here's an act of material, you know, that's like, and I just went out, and then I wanted to like stew on it, and I wanted to wait for like some sort of weird moment in nature that would say, now I'll get to the piano and write it. And I was just thinking and dreaming. And then there's this electrical storm, so with candles, and I had my little battery-powered recorder, and I said, idea for 7, idea for 14, idea for 21. And this thing just came out like a torrent, and I said, after being away for a while, I said to Lynn, I said, let's get together. I have 15 minutes of music you've never heard. And we got together, and then once we got it, but I was able to see what her vision is, and I was able to respond in my way to that. And then we got together, and then we crafted the rest of it like we always did. You know, took things out.
But it took 10 years. to get there. You know, those are the hurdles in
Yeah.
you know, the Glorious Ones was sort of similar. It took a long time, and I just couldn't figure it out. And every summer I would sit down and write a new draft, and they were in verse. And I have different summers of the Glorious Ones. This is an iambic pentameter. This is
Like people-
this is couplets. I couldn't. It didn't end up in verse at all.
I mean, people ask how long it took us to write the show, and it was produced in 2007. And all I would say is, let me put it this way: in the first reading of the Glorious Ones, the ingenue was Donna Murphy. That's a pretty long time. So, but it started out as a large. It's very Candide-like. It's like the merry pranks of this little.
It's
theater
based on
troupe.
commedia,
It's
right?
based on
Yeah.
commedia.
And they go
Mhm.
here to
and
here.
it's changing
Yeah.
theater.
And there's so many incidents into it. So originally we wrote it with like large scale, with a big chorus, with the troupe traveling, and they meet they meet these people and those people, and that it just really didn't work.
Yeah.
And then we did. Then Lynn's best one is that iambic pentameter version, which
I was
didn't
gonna
work
bring
in
one,
a
and
complete.
this is too humiliating.
And anyhow, what it wound up being is, it wound up being a show about a troupe, and there were 8 members of the troupe, and they performed all of the hundreds of roles, and in their style of theater, and it was really wonderful. So we thought that's what it should be. But then ultimately, we were writing and trying to set on paper a show that's about theater that's not written down. So think of that, it's about improvisation. So we knew that we had to get funny actors and creative people in a room, and we just sort of had this like commedia workshop, and we built a lot of it using those ideas, because it just seemed crazy trying to come up with a draft on paper about
Right,
theater.
to let it be created the way that.
Yeah. And so it was wonderful.
So
that.
these are the hard parts, is just figuring out that the what it is. And once you figure out what it is, then you try to figure out how do we dole that out when we know what the story is, and in what order do we dole it out, and where do these moments come, and
And also the how-to, because the other thing about Desirose, the thing that really changed for us, it came about storytelling and telling one's own story, because these two women that are the central characters in the novel, they don't meet until very late in the game. So we thought you can't have one start and then the other major character doesn't enter till there. So we had to find some way that they could be in the opening number and throughout. And
right. So it became an oral history,
history.
basically telling about slavery and the adventures of two women who actually lived and went on this journey together. And anyway, I mean, these are just examples of craft, and
It's just,
you know.
I mean, the common theme is sometimes you're there in the details trying to work it out, and you realize you've got to take several steps back and realize
and see the whole.
it has nothing to do with this detail.
That's
It's where this
exactly
fits in
right.
the whole thing.
That's exactly right.
I even love we talked about shared vision, right? That's so important to be seeing the same thing. And with Desirose, how you could never see what
I
Lynn
couldn't.
saw until you sort of took it away from the source material,
Right.
made sort of, here is what I see, Stephen. And then
exactly.
you went off and
Right.
came back.
He was hoping I wouldn't do anything. He was hoping, but I.
But it's interesting. I don't think I was ready to do that show. I
Yeah.
think
It was a tough show.
I think whenever you go through the years, you guys know this, as a team, it's like you're developing as individuals, but also you're developing as a team. And I think in 1992, I would have written a really poor Desirose. I don't think I had it in me yet, and I didn't think I had flexed enough muscles to be able to write that show. And it was really intense subject matter, and I don't think I would have been able to do that without Ragtime, which happened,
Right.
6 years later.
Right.
And then that emboldened me in a certain way, and
Yeah.
so I think, and it's same thing with the Glorious Ones. It's really about two generations of theater. It's about like the old guard and the young Turks. And the old guard is the guy who's the improvisational guy, and the young Turk is creating this totally new kind of theater.
Yeah.
And when we started writing that show, I totally identified with that young Turk. And I was able to nail that part, and I could never fully get into the head of the other guy. And then, of course, 13 years pass, and then you know more about that
You get that
character.
other end,
So
yeah.
in a certain way, I think it was a blessing that it took that long, because I was able to look at the characters and live with them, and know more about that stuff.
Have another
Sure.
way to get into that too. Questions for Stephen and Lynn?
When the book writer was the third collaborator, can we talk a little about that? Peter Stone complained to me that the lyricist always stole his best scenes.
That's right.
And not only that, but they got royalties on it and he didn't.
Right.
Can we talk about the third collaborator?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. We're working with the third collaborator right
Right now, we're
right
doing
now.
our third show with Terrence McNally at the moment, that he's writing the book to Anastasia. And, you know, you have to be a generous person to be a book writer, because that's correct. The lyricist's job is to steal all of the highest emotional points and best scenes and turn them into lyrics. And if you have a problem with that, be a playwright. You know, it's really true. A musical is a collaboration. As far as royalties, that's a whole, you know, songs are songs. There's a whole other structure for paying for songs on records or, you know, whatnot. But in the theater, it's all favored nations. Everybody gets exactly the same thing. So, you know, if you want to complain about that, be a playwright. You know, it's just, it's one of those things. But Terrence happens to be one of those very rare playwrights who not only is generous with his work, but understands musical structure. There are playwrights, we've had a few not run-ins, but, you know, a few experiences with a few of them who are wonderful playwrights and can't write a musical, just can't relinquish their work, don't understand musical structure and flow, don't understand rhythmic progression. There are a lot of, it's almost an intuitive thing, and Terrence, we're very lucky that he's our friend and our collaborator, because he's fantastic in all of those ways.
And he actually encourages Lynn. He overwrites. He'll write like a big soliloquy, give it to Lynn, encouraging her. Use anything that's in there, and you know, and like the song "Goodbye My Love," God bless you, and I suppose bless America too. That was Terrence's speech.
And I just said, that's a
She
lyric.
just I think I just started studying the music, and then I kept going from there with the idea, and you know, then Lynn was, you know, setting it, and then we knew that there had to be a change of heart or a change of mind in the middle of it, and then the music shifted that way, and you know, if the music can surprise you, and you're supposedly in the driver's seat, and you go, whoa, where'd that come? Then chances are you can surprise the audience, and that's what it is. So much of it is about surprising the audience, staying ahead of the audience.
And who's the book writer on Tuck, Everlasting?
Claudia Scheer.
Claudia Scheer, right?
And she, you know, it's a magical, mysterious job being a book writer, and everything that Lynn said is right. It's like it's totally intuitive, and if the playwright doesn't understand, you know, musical structure and all that stuff, it just like becomes torture. And Claudia, we're lucky Claudia does, like she's really great and understands all of those things. So.
I saw her perform at Playwrights Horizons. I'm forgetting the name of the show, but the one with all her different jobs.
Yeah.
And
Blown Sideways Through Life.
Blown Sideways Through Life. And I felt it was a musical without any singing. It just had this flow and this arc to it, and there were just arias of words. I thought it was sensational.
Yeah, she
really
just,
brilliant.
and she too is very, we did an event and she explained being the book writer as the dirt from which everything blossoms.
Yeah.
The
and-
rich, loamy soil.
Yeah.
Right. The nutrients.
She's like, it's thankless and you get blamed for everything, but then you're also like the foundation and
The bones, yeah.
the bones from which everything springs. So.
There was a, Chris and Nathan, there was a question from Twitter, whether there's a,
that's
see, that's what the secret
Twitter.
yellow card is. Is there a cast album for Tuck, Everlasting?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Hopefully there will be.
There's nothing even on your website from that show?
I mean, there are like
demos?
random YouTube
There's some
recordings.
YouTube
and
performances.
stuff.
Everything is on YouTube if
Yeah.
you look
Yeah.
deeply enough.
But
better or
hopefully there
worse.
will be a cast album.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'd love to open it up for other questions that people might have. Yeah, down here.
Yes, I'm curious about the process in the early formative stage where you're working book writer, director, other key participants, and you're looking to find a particular sound and feel to the project. Now, Ragtime, of course, because of that, had its own setting, and the music took on that nature. But you know, sometimes it's not as obvious. Maybe with Tuck Everlasting, you know, what was the thought process about what style will the music have? Does that affect the way you come up with lyrics and rhyme schemes and so forth? So just to kind of get a sense of what is that preliminary thought and creative process to figure out the tone of a musical?
You know, I'll just say one quick thing, because I'm not a composer in that sense, but Howard Ashman always said that in his opinion, every project needed to have some inherent musicality, some inherent musical style. I don't know if I would go that far, but it sure helps, and when you look at the many shows we've done, the only one that I don't think had its own inherent style maybe was Seussical, which was more of an invented
Oh,
world.
well, it was interesting, because Seussical was the show that we wrote right after Ragtime. And there was something about when you're writing for a particular locale during a particular time, and even though it's different groups of people which allow you for variety within that, you're really trying to capture your vision and your take on that world. But for Seussical, it was you could make up anything, and so
Right.
so the people that lived in the jungle, I thought, oh, it could be cool. It could be urban jungle. So there's like kind of like R&B and like hip hop and soul, and there's like during the chase scene, I thought, oh, this could be fun. It could be like those like Streets of San Francisco. There's like those TV shows from the 70s, and I was like just
You have a little Aretha Franklin in
yeah,
there.
Aretha's
It sort of
in there.
lent itself to anything.
But then the other worlds were other things, like the Who's were there was sort of like Spike Jones was
Yeah,
what I was
yes,
thinking
yeah,
of,
yeah.
like this little odd thing, and so I think the composer does have to make choices, but I think it certainly had its own sensibility.
It did, but a lot of our other shows, the glorious ones, was set in 17th century Italy. So there's an Italian sound that you find. Little Dancer has a classical French sound to it, the show we just did. They all somehow embody something. I think probably Tuck Everlasting would have some.
Yeah, the
You know.
challenge with Tuck was that it was like a turn of the century New England setting, and the turn of the last century. So researching that kind of music, it's like, it's just kind of like, do you really want a musical to sound like this for especially a contemporary musical?
Yeah.
So in having the great fortune to have Casey Nicolau in the room with us when we first started working on the piece, I as the composer would like try a bunch of different things, and we finally settled on this sort of otherworldly folk sound where it sounds like it's you can't quite put your finger on what this folk music is. It's like, is it Celtic? Is it Scottish? Is it Irish? Is it country music? What is it? And so it became this sort of like melting pot of different like folk styles, while still like giving you some period New England stuff at the same time. And but we all, you just have to like
Totally.
jump in and
Yeah.
make those
Invent
choices.
something.
And if it's like totally wrong and anachronistic, sometimes that's even a choice.
Yeah.
But
And sometimes that works.
Well, look at
As,
Hamilton.
I was going to
If
say, as
anybody's seen
Hamilton appears to be proving right
That's
now, you
right.
can
Yeah.
go completely anachronistic and get to the heart of a story. Another one.
Exactly.
For example, when you did the two versions, and you did kind of the first one was definitely had this kind of bluesy, dreamy thing. Did that also fit into the scheme that you're talking about this otherworldly thing, or did it sort of stick out as where did this come from a musical sensibility?
I think it's a little bit of both with that particular one. That one was an attempt to go in a more like a saloon type direction for that particular character. And then what we settled on and what's there now is sort of in that more open universe of where does this actually fit.
And I think what you said like really struck a chord with me. You don't want to be so slavish to any particular style. Like even Little Dancer that we did, like it's set in 1880s world of the ballet in Paris, and so I listened to a lot of that ballet music, and in fact it ends with a ballet, and we have a lot of dance in it. But at the same time, the younger characters, I wanted them to appeal, and so younger people today could understand and relate to them. So their material's much more pop-like, and so trying to find a way to have the classical world and the pop world exist, that actually became the cool and challenging thing, not only in the writing, but then when we got in there to do the orchestration. Because I said I don't want a rhythm section, even though it has these kind of rhythms, and so we played around and found interesting ways of stitching it all together.
Yeah.
And in
It's
the end,
scary, but it's
the-
also fun.
It's fun.
Yeah,
the
that's what
music
makes it
still
fun.
sounds like you're writing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? You're not so slavish to the
No.
period and the style that you're just going to be somebody else.
Right.
It still also has to filter back through you, as the words do as well. The words are true to the period and the time, but the way you're putting them together is yours, not just.
Yeah, I mean, every time, and I always try to do it, but it never works. It's like every time, especially in Tuck, when there was an opportunity to write something that was like really like a gay 90s type like period tune, we got one in there, and every time they sang it, like not in this recent production, but in like previous readings and workshops, the people at the readings and workshops would be like, oh, come on. So, you know, they would go and find a way to like get that period stuff in other tunes while still acknowledging the contemporary
Contemporary
harmonic
audience, yeah.
sensibility.
I know you guys have to take off, and we're almost at 8 o'clock. Can we take
There were some
one?
other questions.
Yeah,
after
let's
that.
take another
Are
question.
they gonna play something?
Well, I don't know. Did you guys want to play anything?
We have.
I gave you that opportunity. And then you
Yeah.
tell us
We
this
have
great
a-
story.
Don't leave
Well,
us
we
hanging.
have a little something, and this is off of Ragtime. I think that's an interesting one because everybody says what comes first, the words or the lyrics, or the words and the music. And with this one, this was one of the two that where I started, where it was like music first. And it's the end of Act 1, and we had to write our 4 songs. And it started with music first, and it's after the character of Sarah is murdered in a public place, and there's an outpouring of grief from all over the country.
Right.
And so I wrote a song that would become Till We Reach That Day. I wrote the music for the thing, and it's set in at Sarah's funeral, and I played it for Lynn, and she said, she said it sounds very hopeful, and I said, well, I think the music would be hopeful. I think it would have that sense of hope, and even though there's rage under it, and she said, but
There's rage.
there's rage, there's anger, there's point of view. So in other words, somebody reading about this incident in the paper versus Kohlhaas, who's in shock from seeing that himself, to Emma Goldman, who would have heard about it on the street and said, well, how could they beat a woman, and or the women's issues, and there are all these different points of view, which sounded really cool. So I'll just play 2 little themes, and then I have a bit of a surprise, a cool thing.
I have a feeling it's this. I'm
I
not
know. I don't know what
What
that
is that?
is. There's a surprise
I don't
over
know.
here.
Surprise.
I don't think it's a lie.
So what I brought to Lynn was pretty much this. I don't even know that this is the key. So that was like the basis of what the hymn would be.
And the lyrics, not that I feel like singing them because it's not in my range or anything, but there's a day of peace, a day of pride, a day of justice. We have been denied. Let a new day dawn, oh Lord, I pray. We'll never get to heaven till we reach that day. So it's a gospel hymn in a way, sung at a funeral.
And so then we began
Yeah.
to talk about the idea of the points of view, which was a really cool and interesting idea, which allowed us to go into individual heads. Now that came from Lynn. We're just responding to the piece of music that really didn't have a lyric to it yet. And so when we began working on that, I thought there is a really dark and ghostly ideal of ragtime that maybe could go as a counterline. So it was this. So that would go like
And they
go through all the
overlap.
different-
So as half of them are singing, there's a day of peace, a day when justice will come, and we'll never get to heaven until we reach that day. There are people over here singing what they did to her, what they took from her. She had life in her, Lord, she had my baby. Look what they left of her, left of her, left of my girl. Very angry, very dark. And Emma Goldman singing, you know, and they beat her and beat her and beat her, and it's all going against this hymn. So
what I brought in, because we were talking about demos earlier, so I brought in the demo that we did for the
our
tune.
first demo.
Yeah, and so this is yours truly playing the piano, and this is at a studio that had what's that called?
Mixing board?
Automation.
Automation.
So there were,
we all lined
were
up,
all
and like I
pushing
was
the
responsible
faders,
for these,
and we had our friends.
faders.
We had our friends singing.
We had our friends singing.
Yeah, it
so
was
this is
crazy.
Chuck Cooper as Coalhouse Walker, and many Michelle Pox in there.
Yeah, there's
and,
tons of people.
And whenever I listened to it, we could never we kept the exact vocal arrangement for the production. It's pretty close to what we wound up with, but I can never replicate the excitement. I thought, what was the hidden ingredient that's on this that you're about to hear that we never got into the show? And then I remembered it's Billy Porter singing the alto part, and then at one point doubling the soprano.
Right.
So listen to these women
Even
sing, and that's
then
Billy
he knew.
Porter. Okay.
This was this was our audition, one of our audition
so this is the
songs.
audition.
Yeah, we got very ambitious, and we
really.
did the big moments. Yeah.
I guess it worked.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, let us know up or down volume wise.
I'm excited to hear this.
It's fun. Sounds like trouble.
Till we reach that day.